What's your thoughts on the crypto market right now? Are we heading into a bear market, which we see a lot of people talking about, or are you more aligned to myself and this is going to be the biggest bull market in history?
Yeah, I think the biggest issue is that the U.S. government came in and it disrupted our super cycle. Normally every 4 years we have the halving. The following year, you have a big surge of retail interest, a big surge of price speculation. And for 12 years we've done that. And we were kind of hit on both sides. And so when the Biden administration was at its kind of apex, they were suing all the exchanges, putting all the leaders in prison. And it was just a real tough time. And then the Trump administration came in December of last year, very excited. We said, oh my Lord, the US government's going to embrace crypto and pass all these great laws. But it was kind of like Sloth from Goonies, It means well, but if he hugs you, crushes your ribs. So we got a little bit too much love from the US government, and it created market disruptions that were, in hindsight, not helpful. So I think this year has been a bit lopsided. You see a ton of institutional interest, but they've only put a toe in. So that toe was mostly on the Bitcoin side, which is why Bitcoin went over $100,000, and you had a ton of ETFs and other things come along. But we haven't gotten the love on the altcoin side quite yet. So my belief is that we'll clear this local minima probably within 1 to 2 quarters, and then after that's cleared, we'll see appreciation continue, because we're not done with the cycle yet. I think Bitcoin's going up to 250,000. I think the altcoins will all reach all-time highs, because there's a demographic issue here. You have 550 million people in crypto. We're going to 1 billion people in crypto. You have hundreds of billions of dollars in stablecoins. We're going to $1 trillion in stablecoins, and you have $10 trillion plus worth of real world assets entering the space over the next 5 years. So if you look at the numbers and you do the fundamental analysis, not the technical analysis, there's no way to have fundamentals like that and for crypto prices to be deflated. It's just not going to happen. The other thing is that, especially with the rise of privacy coins, you see a lot of conversation around, well, what are going to be the big things over the next 5 or 10 years? And people are starting to realize it's not about better, faster, cheaper. It's about holism. It's about unification of the regulated and unregulated markets, unification of TradFi and DeFi. And so there's a lot more nuance behind the winners and losers. And this is why, when you do like Ethereum to Solana, Solana to SUI, you notice you're getting less resolution in terms of the price and action, even though SUI is better technology than Solana or Ethereum. So there's no longer this better, faster, cheaper scalability narrative. It's now privacy enhanced narrative that's coming. So you need new narratives, you need a new generation, and that will reboot and restart the market. It's very much like the rise of the second generation back in 2013 and 2014, where Bitcoin had kind of stalled a little bit. It got up to $1,000, it collapsed down to $250. And a lot of people are saying, crypto's dead, the narrative's over, everything's a copy of a copy, you have Litecoin and Feathercoin and all this other stuff. And then these smart contract systems came, and they didn't just kind of sort of enhance things a little bit, they opened up a whole new universe of possibilities that were so much more vast and beyond what Bitcoin had. And when you look at things like Midnight, as one of the first fourth generational cryptocurrencies, it does the same thing. You open up this vast new universe of privacy enhanced applications, which really replicate real world businesses in ways you can't do right now on Ethereum or Cardano or Bitcoin. So that, along with the demographic changes, it's going to create a new bull market. We just have to get over this Goonies sloth crushing us, U.S. government over-loving us type of situation, and get over the tariff mania and the fear of the macro environment.
Awesome. So probably the most important question I'm going to ask today, at least in my opinion, what should people do?
You should like and subscribe to Cheeky Crypto.
Yeah, I led you into that one. So back to the crypto market. In the past, you've said that you believe Cardano will eventually flip Ethereum. But do you think Cardano could one day flip Bitcoin? And the reason why I ask this, if everything comes on chain, real world asset tokenization, the emergence of AI, privacy, which brings in all these different industries, do you think there will ever be one day where altcoins flip Bitcoin?
Well, I look at it now like the triumvirate. 2021 was a very different market than 2025. 2021 Cardano was number 3. We were about $100 billion, and structurally we were just missing a few things. We were too late out the gate with our smart contract paradigm, and even though directionally we're right about the paradigm, it took us too long to get the DevX where it needed to be, and it took us too long out the gate to get the scalability technologies that we needed. So we missed that cycle. Had we had that technology that we have today in 2021, I firmly believe we would have flipped Ethereum because we're just structurally better than them in many ways. But we missed it, and Solana took that advantage, and they were very smart about it. With respect to where we're at today, I look at kind of a triumvirate of Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Cardano, and Midnight. And I say, you got a value layer, you got a computation layer, you got a privacy layer. And the combination of those three things, I think, is all you're ever going to need inside the industry. Generationally, they cover pretty much everything, and when you're a government, you don't want to make controversial or rash decisions. And so Bitcoin is the adoption point for many of them. And now that we have Bitcoin DeFi, you can move out of that ecosystem into Cardano and into Midnight, and you put these pieces together, you can run any economic, political, or social system. So collectively, I'd like to see kind of an alliance there, like Caesar and Crassus and Pompey. I'd like to see these three chains come together, and I think they could all dramatically mutually benefit from each other. Ethereum is Ethereum, and Solana, Sui. They've done a great job of fighting each other and spending billions and billions of dollars and creating narratives and meme coins and all these other things. But for the most part, what they haven't done is penetrate the real world commerce. Okay, there's no big company running solely on this infrastructure. There's plenty of big companies that have dipped their toes in the water and deployed something, like Mercedes-Benz deployed bonds, or IBM does something somewhere, or something like that. But for the most part, there's no CEO of a Fortune 10 or Fortune 20 company that wakes up and says the backbone of our entire enterprise is based on Ethereum or Bitcoin or any of these things. So for that matter, when you have something like Midnight, for the first time ever, I think that is a real possibility, that you can transition a company into that realm. And when you look at Cardano plus Bitcoin with that, there's enough volume, momentum, value, and people to facilitate that kind of sea change and transition. So I'm very excited about that prospect of this. So it'll take about 3 to 5 years to reach its conclusion, but in hindsight, there's just going to be no other option. Like, why would you use a stable coin on Ethereum where every single transaction you make is tracked and traced, and it can be frozen at any time and your funds can be seized at any time? It doesn't really feel like crypto, does it? It feels like a CBDC. So then you have Vitalik, and now I guess he's wearing Hawaiian shirts and using Hawaiian launch names, and now he announces he has privacy, just like he wanted liquid non-custodial staking, just like he wanted UTXO. So it's very reassuring that they continue to imitate, but Temu privacy is not privacy. You need something at its core like Midnight to facilitate that. And when you look at our prospects in 3 to 5 years, I think we're well ahead of the game in terms of how to bring the big people to the table, make everybody profit from it, and basically be a layer 2 to everybody. So we no longer need to compete with them. We can just bring this to the entire industry, and no one has any incentive to displace Midnight from that perspective.
Awesome. So if you had the power to redesign Cardano from scratch today with everything that you've learned over the period of building, what would it be and why?
Well, the question is, do I get to use 2025 technology or do I get to use 2015 technology? Because the problem is that there were a lot of things that I would have done differently if I had the tools and tech of today versus what we had in 2015. The challenge was that there were 2 really good programming languages that were quite sensible and quite reasonable, and one framework that was quite sensible and reasonable, but they were discounted for a variety of reasons, which today are awesome. So .NET at the time was an open source, and had it been, it would have been very reasonable to actually write Cardano as a .NET application, use F# and a combination of C#. It would have worked everywhere, and people have been quite happy with it. Or had Scala 3 been out, we would have written it in Scala 3 instead of Haskell, because you get all the Haskell benefits, but then you also get a much more concise syntax. Rust at the time was quite primitive. It just had come out, but now it's the dominant programming language of the cryptocurrency space. You know, we could have done probably a much better job of interoperating with people. Like, we had an opportunity in the early days to work on libp2p. Instead, we built our own network stack. In hindsight, had we gotten involved there, it probably would have been better for our ecosystem as a whole. There were some bets that we made that didn't quite work out, and if we had made them differently, I think it would have really changed things. Like, we wanted to have a hybrid ledger design. We wanted to have accounts and UTXO together, and originally the idea was that the UTXO side would have asset issuance and a Turing incomplete language. So we'd have like color coins with Marlowe. And because everything was Turing incomplete, you get these beautiful proofs that you have completeness of the financial transaction. So there's no bugs, and there can never be any lost funds or DAO hacks or things like that. But then full programmability would be in an account model, and at the time it was Yella in the K framework. And we bet big on that. We had 19 full-time people, we spent millions of dollars, and we just never get that to work. In hindsight, we could have done RISC-V. You know, we knew a lot about RISC-V. It was quite young at the time. Now it's the dominant standard, and the majority of the ZK VMs are using RISC-V, as is our Bitcoin DeFi play, where we have RISC-V and a transpiler to Bitcoin script. So in hindsight, we've done that. Aiken is a really good programming language, and you know, it makes a lot of sense to bring that in. And I think we could have built Aiken well before, you know, building Plutus, and it would have had a lot more developer accessibility. We could have spent more attention to data availability, event sourcing, contract composition, you know, these types of things. I always viewed them as kind of emergent properties, with determinism being the most important thing. But you know, developers seem to prefer the other direction than the direction that we took. So we're getting there with Starstream and other things, but it's a longer road. You know, the other thing is integrations with standards. The foundation had an opportunity to get Circle in for about $3 million in 2021. I should have just paid that out of my pocket. You know, I wanted them to express themselves and do things, and they just didn't get it done. We had mutually announced Chainlink integration, Chainlink and input-output in 2021, and both sides kind of dropped the ball on it. It was a different environment, and you know, we could have taken it more seriously, that integration, and had better Oracle play. The challenge I always had was like, well, if I adopt these large standards from the Ethereum ecosystem and the Cardano ecosystem, all domestic development of those standards dies. You know, because if you're an Oracle like Charlie 3 and Chainlink comes, how do you compete with that? Or if you're a small stablecoin on Cardano and this other large stablecoin comes in, like USDC, how do you compete with that? So I really wanted people, entrepreneurs who invested their time, effort, money, made cases years of their lives and millions of dollars, not to just get obliterated by, you know, having Walmart move into your backyard, right? So in hindsight, that was kind of a mistake, you know, from an ecosystem development. And it was a partial mistake on the IO side, and certainly an issue on the Emergo and the CF side, because they had primary responsibility for that development. But we could have made it more easy for them to come in earlier. And there was, in the early days, a lot of partnership opportunities. I would have made a much more aggressive play into the browser wallet space. And I think in the early days, we probably could have had a strong partnership with Brave. We do now. We look, Brendan spoke at this conference. You know, Ada is now supported in Brave. We could have embraced them a lot earlier and been a bigger part of their journey. And you know, now they have 100 million users. So the challenge with technology is you don't get to play in reverse. You have to play, you know, forward. And every time you make a decision with incomplete information, as you look to the future, it seems entirely rational, and it seems like you're making good calls. And then in hindsight, it's obvious what you should have done, you know? And so we could have done many, many, many different things. On the other hand, we're the most decentralized cryptocurrency on the planet, as measured by the EDI. You know, we have a great on-chain governance system. We have a nice on-chain treasury. We're still in the top 10. You know, we have a lot of momentum. Laos is well underway, and it's doing quite well. We have a lot of wonderful things coming down the pipe with Cardano's interoperability with systems. So the third generation vision is nearly complete. I think we've solved the blockchain trilemma. I think we've preserved our decentralization. And overall, I think the roadmap that we signed up for is done with Cardano. So it's really now finding relevance in this new world where we're entering the fourth generation and we're entering Bitcoin DeFi. And I do believe Cardano has a lot to do in that world, and Cardano still can appreciate significantly in value and gain an enormous amount of users. The biggest mistake I made was governance. The biggest mistake, the interinstitutional governance. Emurgo had a lot of leverage in the beginning because they're the ones who did the crowd sale. And so people say, why don't you pick on Emurgo and all this other stuff? Well, they brought the $72 million in, and Emurgo founders were the people who did the crowd sale. So you couldn't mandate super draconian terms on all these types of things. And we kind of had a hope or expectation that they would see great value in investing in the ecosystem. And there's a lot of history there because we were slow to the market with smart contracts. We would have had, like with Midnight, smart contracts much earlier in the play. Midnight, we have smart contracts before mainnet even launched, whereas Cardano, it took till 2021. If we had those much earlier, I think Emurgo would have invested more money in building a native dApp ecosystem, and that was our fault, not their fault. Whereas the CF, there's a lot of reasons why it ended up the way it ended up, but it was never my intention as a founder of the ecosystem to have an organization basically nested in a jurisdiction where there's no accountability and there's personal liability for the board members. You can never vote on a board member, and the board members have personal liability for the decisions made by the organization, so they'll never be aggressive. They'll never take a risk. Why would you take a risk if you get none of the upside? You're not from the ecosystem, and if a mistake happens, you have personal liability. That's just a fundamentally broken structure for being able to be aggressive like the Solana Foundation is, or AVAX Foundation is, or any of these others. So I would have set up the Cardano Foundation in an exceedingly different way. We did that with the Midnight Foundation, and you can see how aggressive they are, over 100 partnerships, including the Google Cloud relationship that they brought in. That's an example and testimony to good KPIs and good development. And the other thing is, when you're aggressive about your governance, you're also aggressive about your KPIs. One of the biggest mistakes of expectation management was that we didn't, as a community, come together and figure out what are the KPIs of the ecosystem. What is the definition of good? Is it MAU? Is it TVL? Is it transaction volume? So in the absence of that, everybody gets to pick their favorite statistic. It can be price, it can be TVL, whatever it is. And if you're not doing good in that category, everything else doesn't matter. So the fact that Laos is nearly done doesn't matter. Hydra now with Delta DeFi doesn't matter. All the decentralization we've achieved doesn't matter. The on-chain constitution this year doesn't matter. The rise of the members-based organizations like Intersect doesn't matter. Why? Because price bad. And that's a really untenable situation to be in. So I can't control the macro. Vitalik Buterin can't control the macro, okay? He's got $100+ billion in TVL and 100 times the users of us, and everybody's integrated in Ethereum. It's a $400 billion ecosystem. Is he a bad actor because Ethereum's gone down 30%? Is he making fundamental mistakes in his roadmap and ecosystem because the price is depreciated? Similarly, Bitcoin has 550 million users. The US government is a holder, and the president's son is literally mining it. Is Michael Saylor a bad actor because Bitcoin's gone down 20%? Has he failed all the MicroStrategy people? It's just such an absurd metric. When you look at these things, it's like, I don't control tariffs. I don't control when the macroeconomy's blown up and there's a threat of a war with China, or there's not peace in the Middle East, or trade is gone to hell or something like that. And I also don't control an AI bubble. You got NVIDIA worth $5 trillion, which is more than Canada and Australia combined, one company. And a lot of people are saying, well, when that blows up, it's going to be 10 times worse than Silicon Valley when the dot-com boom and bust happened. So I don't control that macro environment. And when it does and the cryptos go down, then everybody goes, well, see, you failed the ecosystem. So all the other things we've done, all the sacrifices people have made, all the hard work that people have put in doesn't matter because price go down. So we didn't do a good job, I think, as an ecosystem of putting down the KPIs, all agreeing these are the things that really matter, and we're only going to focus on that. And in the absence of it, it's created a bit of strife and chaos, which has been very problematic.
Yeah, I tend to agree. It's been crazy. I think we last caught up in Edinburgh the day that you announced Midnight. A lot has happened since then. Privacy seems to be a hot topic. Zcash, I think, has pumped over 1,500% in like the last, 45 days or so. Do you think this is all happening with privacy and this it being a hot topic because of the success of what Midnight's already achieved?
No, I don't think Midnight has much to do with it yet. There's certainly a lot of incredible traction. Like we got 1.7 million, I think, views in like 4 days on my whiteboard video. So that's exciting. And obviously the huge participation with Glacier Drop. It's the largest airdrop of all time. When you look at the Kraken, the gate distribution, the scavenger hunt, and the airdrop together. So that's awesome. But Midnight's got to enter market. So December 8th, the token launches and you'll get liquidity. It'll be traded on exchanges and tier 1 listings are coming. So that's exciting. But next year is going to be the year. And this year, people are starting to realize that they have to take privacy much more seriously. And it has nothing to do with crypto. It has everything to do with the rise of stablecoins and the rise of AI. In stablecoins, people are starting to understand that stablecoins are a poor man's CBDC. You have this company that issues it that has the ability to freeze your assets at any time, reverse them at any time, and they can track everything you do. And then you have AI where everything you think, believe, and do is being absorbed, and then they create a digital twin of you, and they no longer need you, and they can just throw you away. So, Snoop Dogg's like, wait a minute, I'm hearing a lot of music that sounds like my music and sounds like my voice, but I ain't getting paid for it. What's going on here? Or if you're a coder, you work for a company for 6 months and they let you go, and now they got your digital twin coding and they don't have to pay you. And they said, well, that's not right. And they said, well, you got to get custody of your data again. So people are starting to really care about privacy because it's becoming existential for them in a certain respect. So they said, well, that has to extend to all infrastructure, all economic, political, and social infrastructure. So you really need programmable privacy, you need selective disclosure, you need a different notion of identity in this new world of AI. And when they looked at crypto, they say, are there anything that can you offer us? And Ethereum's kind of a partial solution, and all the privacy preserving systems are fragmented, they're not unified. So things like Midnight, they kind of flipped the script because they unified the pet space, the privacy enhancing technology space, and they're intrinsically cooperative so they can bring it to everyone everywhere, and they don't force you to have to change your network effect or your fundamental technology. And I think that's the way to get adoption. Every time there's a new generation, there's an argument over where is that going to be done. So with the second generation, the argument was, is it going to be an L2 to Bitcoin or an L1? So you had color coins and master coin, and they were over Bitcoin, and they didn't work. And then Ethereum came and it dominated the whole thing. Then when the third generation came, they said, okay, is the third generation going to be a layer 1 that has new properties, or are they going to be layer 2s on top of Ethereum? For example, Starkware or ZK Sync or Polygon or these types of things. And so for now, it looks like layer 1 is actually the way to go. So now we have a fourth generation, and it's the same question. Are you going to be building a completely new privacy system and everybody's going to migrate over to that system? Or is the system going to kind of retrofit on top of the existing third, second, first generation systems? So the bet that Midnight is taking is a hybrid bet. Because of Minotaur, it can become a full layer 1 if it wanted to, but I think it's better as a meta chain because it sits on top of Ethereum and Cardano and Bitcoin and Solana and other things, and it lets you pay in the tokens that you have, and it lets users seamlessly use the system. So we'll see if that cooperative economics kind of cracks the nut. But if it turns into like a layer 1 thing and the network effects move, well, Minotaur on Midnight allows that to happen as well. So I think we took the best bet for this generation. But every generation has that kind of bet. It has winners and losers with it, and it brings a lot of people in. When we were first generation, we were less than 1 million people. Second generation, we're kind of that 10 to 100 million people range. And then the third generation, we went to 550 million people. So, you just get these dramatic jumps. And when we're in the fourth generation, it's going to bring billions of people into the space through the usual suspects like Google and Microsoft and others.
Awesome. So we're in the UK. I'd be wrong if I didn't bring up some of the free speech issues, and you've talked in the past about identity. The UK are now looking to install a digital ID system. that links up to all the different services and everything. Is there, I mean, obviously there's loads of privacy concerns around all of that aspect of things. The question I'd have is, what's your thoughts on all of that, first off? And secondly, do you ever see a future where perhaps Midnight's integrated and it eases some of those privacy concerns?
I mean, Midnight was built to handle these problems in a way where you can preserve and protect human rights. You know, I think there's a right way and a wrong way to do digital identity. I think it's absolutely Ludditish to say, oh, well, we should never have digital identity. It's like, well, do you have an iPad? Do you have an iPhone? You live in this world that is basically 100% digital. In fact, with augmented reality, the digital world is becoming physical. Okay, it's not moving in one direction, it's moving the other. So you have to embrace it, and what you have to do is you have to create a digital constitution, and you have to say, what do human rights mean in the 21st century? What are we concerned about in the 21st century? Then, how do I get guarantees that the commons will protect that? Not a government, because you can never trust a government. It's the commons, the global society, and the global society in this case is a blockchain. You know, it's the only system we have left where you can have objective reality and instead of don't be evil, can't be evil by design. So to me, if you want to do digital identity, you have to do it first on a blockchain. Second, you have to do it with selective disclosure, zero knowledge proofs, because what you're really doing with digital identity is you're either proving a fact about somebody or you're making a reputation assessment about somebody. If you're proving a fact about somebody, it's a yes/no question at the end of the rainbow. It's, I don't actually need to see the underlying value. It's usually a threshold condition. Are you a UK resident? Are you an accredited investor? Are you a US citizen? Are you eligible to vote? Are you over a certain age? Are you under a certain age? Do you have a certain amount of money? Are you a shareholder in this company? You know, these are facts. Have you graduated from this college? Are you a licensed lawyer? Are you a licensed doctor? Those are facts. Reputational assessments are you a credible person? Should I lend money to you? Can I trust you? Can I give you national secrets? These types of things. Those are more difficult classes of questions, but both of them stem from the same identity, and both of them you can use the same disclosure stack. Now, once you have that in play, then you don't need the government to be the arbitrator of that. This is what always concerns me, is that the government always wants to step in and say, well, we'll just take care of all of that. Well, if they do, every single thing that requires a fact about you or requires a reputation assessment about you, now the government's your partner in that. And if they don't like you or they want to punish you, they'll just shut off your ability to prove that. And effectively, you've been economically deplatformed. From that perspective, you've lost your freedoms, all your freedoms, overnight. No judge, jury, or executioner, and because you don't have economic freedom, you have no economic means to defend yourself, you know, when they make a mistake. So it's a horrific dystopian thing to give the government control over ID. Well, DIDs are self-sovereign. You own them. Blockchains are global systems, not particular systems. So the government should be a partner in this, helping sort out the root of trust of facts and helping sort out the reputation assessment, but by no means should they run the system, own the system, operate the system. It should be above their pay grade. And then I think it's a reasonable way to do that, and then we can continue to add more and more privacy enhancing technologies to it. Now the UK in particular, it's just a pale imitation of freedoms. Like when they say you have freedom of speech, it's bizarre to me that your country would arrest people for flying your flag. In my backyard, I have the U.S. flag. At my clinic, I have the U.S. flag. In my country, it seems to be, you know, a natural thing. In your country, not. Your country seems really obsessed at arresting people for posting things on Twitter, and that's an extraordinarily dangerous precedent to basically say that we're going to chop speech up and based upon things the state doesn't like, arbitrarily and capriciously arrest people. You have to give society the ability to express themselves, even if you feel they're expressing themselves wrongly or in a caustic way, because there's always an element of truth in that expression. And by having a discourse in the commons, it allows you to identify the problems of society and the frustrations of society and move ahead and push ahead. If you say, no, 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 we're only going to decide what speech is okay, what's right speech and wrong speech, and the party decides that, it becomes a tool of control. And also it regresses any social progress, and you lose all your good people. Because any free-thinking, wealthy individual who's talented and capable, they don't want to live in a dystopian hellscape where the minute that they say the wrong thing, they're exiled from society. They have no desire to be in that environment. They're going to go somewhere else where basic human rights are respected and human expression is respected. And there's just an incredibly dangerous precedent with the UK and how it's been treating speech laws and what it's been doing. And it's going to be something they regret in the long term and carry grave economic consequences for the country.
Yeah, I think we're already seeing that. We're seeing just record highs of millionaires just upping and leaving. And we left the UK a few years back, and it's just gradually got worse and worse since we left, which was really shocking to see. Is there, I'm just thinking about time now, we're getting to our time limit. Is there anything else you would like to sort of leave with the audience that perhaps we haven't touched? I've got an interview with Femi, so we're going to cover a lot of the midnight stuff with himself. But is there anything that we perhaps haven't touched on?
Well, I think Midnight is the most important project for us right now because it's really tying together my life's work. It makes Cardano better, it makes Bitcoin better, it makes the space better, and it allows us to get ahead of a lot of the things we've been discussing about digital identity and human rights in a way where people are in charge, not governments or institutions. So if that's something that you're interested in, you want to be part of that revolution, what I would do is go to midnight.network and join the Midnight Discord, sign up as a Midnight ambassador, and build something on it. There's so many builders at this conference. It's very different than a normal launch where they're like, oh, we're so smart, we're so great, here's some money. No, it's a lot of people here just want to solve problems. They want to build something. So there's a ton of engineers here, there's a ton of projects here, and what I care about is build something. Show up. I don't care if you're an XRP community member or an Avalanche community member or whatever. The whole point of Midnight is to allow you to extend what you have into our ecosystem to add a privacy layer to it. And I'm legitimately curious in what people build and what problems they solve. I can imagine like private DEXs and private stablecoins and private interest rate swaps and private custodians. And that's the obvious stuff. But when I built Ethereum with Vitalik, we weren't thinking about CryptoKitties. Maybe he was. He's pretty smart. But it was the special breakthrough thing. And so similarly, I'm looking for those special breakthrough things with Midnight, and that's what gets me up in the morning and gets me really excited. The other thing is the philosophical side of Midnight needs to be built out. We really, over the next 90 days, as a community, have to find what does it mean to be a Midnight community member. It's different than being a Cardano community member or a Bitcoin community member. It's its own thing. And so I'd like a lot of people to join, and we can have one big conversation with those people and start solidifying some of those tenets and values, especially as we tackle the very difficult conversation of privacy and identity. It's the only adult chain in the room. Either you have these absolutists that are like, it has to be 100% private forever and no exceptions, and then you have these government people that say, well, we always want a backdoor inside the system. And I think we threaded the needle very nicely with Midnight, but we have to have a community ride that with us and have that nuanced conversation and say, look, there's a better way that everybody gets something at the table. Microsoft gets something, we as retail people get something, governments get something, and at the end of the day, there's much more that unites us than drives us apart. And the core of it's the preservation and protection of your freedom of association, commerce, and expression. So I believe that that you need a big community to be able to have that conversation, and we need to bring this community together.
Yeah, I fully agree. Appreciate your time. I'm absolutely wounded. I didn't get through all of my questions. We'll have to do it again for sure. But yeah, really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule.
Remember to like and subscribe to Cheeky Crypto.
Yeah, it's a must.